There is no such thing as a confirmed 100% transaction. It's only a matter of degrees. One confirmation makes it much, much more certain. 2 confirmations is enough to sell a high-priced items. 3 is enough because the probability of 3 blocks being rolled back in a fork is minuscule. So you can see, for example, that a 1-block fork happens perhaps a couple of times a day, but certainly several times a week. A 2-block fork happens extremely rarely. A 3-block fork is almost unheard of. And by the time you get to 6 blocks, what that says is that the probability of that being unwound is so low that you could settle enormous transactions on it. And it keeps going. The Genesis block has 280,000 confirmations, and the probability of someone providing enough proof of work difficulty computation to unroll the Genesis block is inversely proportionate to that amount of difficulty. So essentially, there's no such thing as fully confirmed. There's only more and more and more and more certainty as time goes by and as more proof of work and more difficulty is piled on top. And so as a retailer, as someone who's doing transactions in Bitcoin, what you have to decide is, what is the value of the item I am selling? How soon after sale is that item going to be delivered, at which point my commitment to selling it has happened and I can't, not ship it? And therefore, how much risk am I willing to take? And then you calculate how many confirmations that means. And for a cup of coffee, it's 0. For a computer, it might be 2, or a flat screen TV, or maybe 3 at most, because you're not going to ship it in 20 minutes. No one has that shipping down so fast, or at least almost no one. And you can take the small risk that it won't be double spent by looking at the network. By the time you reach 6 confirmations, you could probably buy an aircraft carrier. Be worried about it.
So that's been kind of what we've had to this point, but I think that this tool kind of adds an extra layer in there where you don't necessarily have to make that choice about not trusting, not waiting for the first confirmation because you're okay if you potentially lose $5. It seems like this,
it's not
we've
new,
never
though.
had a layer of tools before, but now it's like the layer of tools, just what it used to go from 0 transactions, or from 1 transaction at the minimum level of this is actually probably going to happen up to, like you said, 280,000 transactions or 280,000 confirmations. With each confirmation you add, it gets exponentially harder to undo what's come before, right?
Exactly. But this is not a new tool. For example, Blockchain Info has had a feature for tracking the propagation of transactions across the network, probably more than a year and a half or 2 years. I've seen it before. So tracking before confirmation, tracking the propagation across all the nodes in the network. You can interrogate them and see what propagation is happening. A lot of systems do that. A lot of systems use propagation as a proxy to eventual confirmation. Which means that it gives them a degree of certainty that as long as you see the good transaction propagating and you don't see a bad transaction propagating, then you assume that eventual confirmation will happen because you know how the miners operate and you know how their algorithm will include transactions into the queue. You can even track which position in the queue it is, so you can see how high priority the transaction has, based on understanding how transactions are selected to be put into a block.
Okay, so we got way off course here, and I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you, Andreas, for explaining all of that to us. That was really interesting. Tying this back into Mt. Gox, we actually did this maybe 5 or 6 months ago and asked if anybody was using Mt. Gox at this point, because it was one of my first exchanges, and 6 months ago I said no, I wasn't using it, and that remains true now. Are either of you guys, it's such a pariah as far as I'm concerned.
No, it's been over a year since I've used Mt. Gox. I don't know why anyone still uses them, actually.
It has name recognition. That really does seem like it's it. Once you get started in a field like this, momentum takes you a long way.
Right, exactly. And the name recognition is continuously, it works in 2 ways. The first one is that newbies get directed to Mt. Gox because that's the exchange that many people know. Worse, it creates these ridiculous headlines where you have these idiot journalists who can't tell the difference between Mt. Gox, the centralized single point of failure exchange with less than 20% of the volume of transactions, and Bitcoin, the decentralized resilient network. So they post these headlines like, Bitcoin withdrawals halted, price plummets. Well, no. Mt. Gox withdrawals halted, Mt. Gox price plummets, volume weighted average price doesn't plummet, and the rest of us are going on with our lives. You get these incredibly bad misunderstandings where people conflate Mt. Gox with Bitcoin, and that's very damaging to the reputation. So not only does Gox benefit from being associated with Bitcoin and getting the new customers, but then it also damages the reputation of Bitcoin by being associated with Bitcoin.
So in 6 months, you said that they're at 20% volume right now. What do we think? 10%, 5%, gone completely, or
0%.
are they going to come back?
0%.
I'm not that optimistic. I think probably in a month or so, they're going to figure out how to implement this stuff. One of the issues they have is their software development methodology is sloppy, so it's going to take them a while to implement this. We've seen that they're generally slow in implementation. So they're probably going to take longer than the other exchanges, but I expect that maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, they're going to figure out how to do withdrawals again. People are going to realize they are solvent. They're going to release their Bitcoin in one big run, but eventually they're going to get more comfortable again. Newbies are going to flood in, and Gox is going to continue to exist a year from now.
But they processing fiat withdrawals. Am I wrong about that?
For dollars.
Yeah, for dollars. So, I mean, are they just not getting U.S. customers? It still seems like people in the U.S. are...
No, I think they're not getting traders or day traders. But if you wire dollars into Gox and convert it into Bitcoin and withdraw the Bitcoin, it works fine. So if your primary goal is to do buy and hold rather than day trade Bitcoin, you don't really need to withdraw fiat. So it's still used as an on-ramp. It can't be used as an off-ramp for Bitcoin, but it can be used as an on-ramp. And as an on-ramp, because of its location in Japan and because it's not subject to some of the same restrictions you see here, I would say it's still going to be used and it's still going to be a valuable tool. I just know that the problem doesn't get solved. They may fix the Bitcoin withdrawal issues, but they will not fix the incompetent management and communications issues. So as soon as this is fixed and newbies flood in again, get ready for the next Goxing, because it's going to happen again. Fortunately, each time they Gox us, it has less and less impact on Bitcoin because they have less and less volume to disrupt. So that's the good news. But Gox isn't going anywhere, I don't think.
So we're going to summon George Bush and say, Gox me once, shame on you. Gox me twice. Well, you can't Gox me again.
And apparently you can Gox people at least 5 times, because those who fail to learn the lessons of history will be taught them again and again until they do.
That's really it. It's the lessons of history and how we have to learn all these things. Again, like you look at a situation like we have with Mt. Gox, and in the normal financial environment, if that's where we were, this would have been a complete crisis that wouldn't have really had a good resolution, or it might have resulted in a bailout under some circumstances, But here, the problem just shakes itself out. It's scary for a little bit, but you're right. Like, I barely even kind of registered this one. Last year when Gox had a problem, I was legitimately concerned, and this time it just doesn't matter that much. So,
well, I mean, if you look at the price fluctuation, and again, if you, instead of taking the idiot journalist perspective of looking at the lowest volume exchange as an arbiter of price, if you do price discovery on the average volume weighted average across exchanges, Gox caused a short panic, which then recovered, and now we're below where we were, a week and a half ago. But the price has stabilized again in the mid 600s. And I would expect gradually, as the other exchanges come back online and start processing withdrawals, the story will be once again the same. Despite all the naysayers, despite all the proclamations of the doom and imminent death and already happened death of Bitcoin, somehow Bitcoin survives. And as Bitcoin survives, people turn around and look at that and go, maybe we need to look into this Bitcoin thing, because it seems to survive a lot. Maybe they have the right message. It is the honey badger of money.
So one of the interesting market-based solutions that I saw come out in the last couple of days to kind of deal with this trauma at Mt. Gox is the price of Bitcoin has plummeted there. It's plummeted at Mt. Gox specifically. And that's interesting because a couple of months ago, Mt. Gox, for the longest time has maintained a pretty substantial premium just because it's been so difficult to get dollars out. So therefore the dollars are worth less, which means you have to pay more. But now that situation has flipped. And so it was interesting to see, I believe his name is Josh Jones. Let me double check that. Yeah, Josh Jones, who's the founder of DreamHost, the Los Angeles Bitcoin Meetup, Chunk Host, and a bunch of other things, basically repurposed one of his exchange websites that he apparently had been working on for a while to be a Bitcoin to Bitcoin exchange. Except in this case, it's mt.gox Bitcoin to real Bitcoin. Because you can transfer Bitcoin within the mt.gox system, you just can't transfer it out of the mt.gox system. So people who want to get cheap Bitcoin and believe that mt.gox isn't actually insolvent and it will actually get solved can buy Bitcoin essentially for like $450 right now compared to the $650 on other exchanges. But they still have to bear that risk. Yeah, absolutely. I love this because it lets people swap out of positions that they're scared about, and they, they're happy about it because, hey, I got some of my money back and now I don't have to worry about it anymore. And speculators get to go in and do this. So, what do you guys think about this?
Yeah, it's a great way to actually, it's almost like reminds me of one of those markets where people bet on who's going to win elections and things like that, or the outcome of different events. And the price of a Gox Bitcoin really reflects people's confidence that they're eventually going to come through. So I just think it's really an interesting mechanism of market-based price discovery.
Yeah, the bottom line is that price plummets is just another way of saying great discounts. If you have confidence that this will, even if you have some confidence that this will eventually resolve itself, then that discount represents the risk premium based on Gox Bitcoin as a risk discount that others are willing to offer in order to get out of that situation, those less confident. And I love the fact that not only, the original idea is brilliant, and having one buyer willing to trade is interesting enough. But creating a full exchange that allows others to take the same risk premium decision and get discounted Bitcoin, thereby converting that risk eventually into quite an extraordinary reward. If this does resolve itself and these people are able to, and I think it will, and I probably should be trading a bit of this. If this does resolve itself, these people are going to get a tremendous discount on their Bitcoin, and that risk is going to translate into a very nice reward. And so what it shows, among other things, is fungibility. Because these Bitcoins are fungible, you can essentially create, when Gox creates two different classes of Bitcoin, one which has a risk discount and one, the open blockchain traded one, which doesn't have a risk discount, then those become two different asset classes that people can trade between with different risk characteristics. And that's brilliant.
Would you like to buy Bitcoin? Cash into Coins provides the fastest, easiest, and safest way to buy Bitcoin in the United States. Simply place an order online, deposit cash at any supported bank, and relax. Cash into Coins will verify your deposit and send out your Bitcoin within 24 hours. Join tens of thousands of people who have purchased from Cash into Coins. What are you waiting for? Buy your Bitcoin today. Go to cashintocoins.com. That's cashintocoins.com.